how does Illustrator's pen tool work? The best way to demonstrate it is to actually show you how curves are created. I'm going to open a file that I have that I like to use when I teach the pen tool. It's called AIPenShapes.ait. It's a template, and I'm going to open it. You'll notice it has some shapes that look like they're selected in these cases with my direct selection tool. You can see the handles around each point. This is really a template that you're going to use to trace to get an idea of how the pen tool works. So before I do anything, I'm going to save this and give it a name, and I'll just call it Pen Practice, my initials at the end, and I'll save it. And I'm going to hold down my space bar and my command key on the Mac or my control key on the PC, and that's going to toggle me to my magnifying glass. So space bar first, then command or control. Because if I do it the opposite way, command or control first and then space bar, I bring up this spotlight feature. It's important to get the order of the keys right. Space bar first, and then your command or control, and that'll toggle you to your magnifying glass. Then you can zoom in. We're going to zoom in on this top S shape, sine curve shape if you're a mathematician. And I'm just going to hold down my space bar again because that gives me my grabber hand. So those are two shortcuts for tools. Space bar is just the grabber hand. Space bar with the command or control key, that's the magnifying glass. If I add my Option or Alt key, that will actually zoom out rather than zoom in. Let me switch to my pen tool. What the pen tool will do is draw points and segments which combine to form paths, and then when they're closed, in other words, the beginning and the end meet, it draws a shape. So on this template, and if you've never used this, just watch me first. Where you see the square represents a single click. So the first thing I'm going to do with my pen tool is position it here and click once. That's going to add a point. Zoom in a little bit more. This time I'm going to use my keyboard shortcut, Command or Control plus. So you can see I've got 1 point there. And as I move my pen further out, I get a segment. Well, if I click again here, I'm going to get a straight line. And if I click again, I'm going to get this kind of arrow shape. And if I hit my Escape key, that's ESC, it's at the very top left corner of my keyboard, I will stop drawing the path. And I can switch to my selection tool and move it, and I now have this arrow shape. But of course, this is not a series of straight lines, it's a series of curves. So I'm just going to delete this arrow shape, and I'm going to start again. Back to my pen tool, single click, that part we got right. Here's where we need to add an extra step. I need to click with my mouse and don't release it. I'm going to click and hold. And then I'm going to drag. And you'll notice that when I drag away from where I clicked, I get a point. And as I rotate, these handles kind of look like an antenna on either side. The curve changes. The closer in, the less sharp the curve, the further out, the more steep the curve. On this template, I've given you exactly how far you need to drag them out. And if I hold down my Shift key, I will constrain these handles at 45-degree angles. It will allow me to draw a much more precise curve by holding down Shift as I drag. And I release my mouse, and there's my first segment. I'm going to undo this and start again. So Command Z, Control Z. Click, hold, and drag out, and Illustrator creates the curve. When I release my mouse, I now have 2 points. There are 2 anchor points here, and between them is a segment. Now when I move my pen over to the next point, that's a single click, you can see that Illustrator is creating the curve for me, because this handle is actually controlling the curve on this segment. So when I get down to that single click, and I do it again, I've got now half of this S curve done. So I go back down to the bottom, and again, this is a click, hold, and a drag. Hold down my Shift key. So each of those handles is exactly aligned with the other. Release my mouse, and then I continue. Single click, Illustrator creates the other half of the curve. Once I type Escape, I've now got my curve. I can switch to my selection tool, and I can move this around. Now take a look at what's happening here. Why am I not able to see this curve on the template? Because there is a fill applied to this. Let me undo to put it back into position. and go to my swatches panel, you can see, of course, here's my stroke, it's black. Behind it is my fill, and the fill that is applied to this is white. This file doesn't have any other swatches in it. So let me go to my Make New button down here just quickly, and I'm just going to make a cyan swatch. Because now that the fill is other than white, which is the background color, you can see a little bit better what the issue was. Okay, so all I need to do is to change my fill to none, and there's my curve. So I'm going to undo it, and I'm just going to quickly do it one more time. So if you're a beginner, you can follow along. And if you understand this, you can move on. So I click, move to the next point, click, hold, and drag, hold down my Shift key to get my antennas, single click, click, hold, and Shift drag, single click, and escape. And if you've never done one before, congratulations, you've just used the pen tool to create your first path.